Hi, everybody. Welcome to another CareerFoundry event this evening. This evening is all about design portfolios and hacks for landing your first design job. I know that we've got a lot of people joining this evening. So whilst people are joining, we've got a public chat on the right-hand side. If you just want to drop your name, where you're joining from, and why you're interested in portfolios. We'd love to make this as interactive as possible. And it's great because we usually get a super international crowd. So don't be shy. Just add your name to the chat. Let me introduce myself and Florian very briefly before we get started. So I am William, Events and Communications Lead here at CareerFoundry, and CareerFoundry is the online academy for your career change into tech. So we offer programs in UX design, UI design, and product design, amongst some other programs too. So if you're interested in that, do check out the CareerFoundry program. And I'm very, very happy to introduce Florian this evening. So Florian is a UI design graduate from CareerFoundry, and he's taken off. He's far away from that now, and he is now a staff product designer at Juro. But also super, super interestingly, he's founded his own platform called Open Doors, which matches junior designers to tech roles. So I think Florian can also talk a little bit more about that later. Hi, everybody. Hi, Nancy from Vancouver. Hi, Ankit from Kathmandu. Hi, Claire from London. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Florian, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more first and before we jump in?
Yeah, happy to. Hello, everyone. Good to be here again. I think I'm a known face around CareerFoundry events at this point. Yeah, my name is Florian. I like William said, I'm a CF graduate, and I've been working in startups mostly ever since I graduated and found my way into the industry. And and I also run Open Doors, which is my kind of side project, really trying to support early career designers, junior designers on their path, because it definitely is, a tough world out there. In tech in general, I would say, but probably for designers, maybe even a little bit more so. So I'm trying to do my best there, providing you with the actual junior jobs that don't ask for 3 years or more. And trying to give you insights every week on my newsletter that I'm very much inviting you to subscribe to. It is free. And also on LinkedIn. So feel free to follow me there or connect with me directly if you'd like. I also do offer services like mentoring and portfolio reviews. So if that's something you feel like you could use my help with, feel free to just inquire, send me a DM. Or look at any of the links on my LinkedIn profile, and you'll find what you need there. I think that's pretty it.
Awesome, thanks, Florian. Now, I know a lot of people, we're going to have a mixed crowd tonight. I'm sure we're going to have some junior designers, and we're also going to have some people who are thinking about a career change into design. So I just want to start off with a general question before we deep dive into some more juicy topics. But let's just talk about the significance of a portfolio first, especially in 2025, because I know we were talking about portfolios 5 years ago. But Florian, in your opinion, what is the significance? How important is a portfolio when you're applying for a design job?
Yeah, so I mean, 5 years ago, discussion definitely was a different one. But there are still voices who say, it's kind of like a failed concept. However, I would say that those voices are very few, and also I don't think that like any of us are in the position to just say, we're not doing that anymore. So they are vital, really, especially for juniors, because they are the only way to show off your skills. Having said that, it doesn't only mean your pure design skills. It does that can actually include more things that make you unique. They are one of the only chances you get in the application process to really showcase like an individual profile and like individual strengths that you have and other candidates might not. And it's a vital part of the designer's journey. It is not easy to create. It is not easy to maintain. I sure know that. And it's definitely a challenge. And there's a lot that can go wrong or maybe not. there's a lot of risk attached, but it is absolutely vital for you to have at this point. Yeah.
Awesome. And then from your position, because I know that you're working relatively, I mean, you're very senior now at the company that you're in. And when a application arrives on your table and you see a design portfolio, what are the kind of the key things that you're looking to see on that first glance?
Absolutely. So a lot obviously always comes down to taste. Do I like or do I not like what I see? But I try to look beyond that, in the first place. I can see if someone, has generally understood design principles or not. Like, that's one thing I definitely immediately look for, and definitely make sure, like, as all hiring managers in design do this, then there shouldn't be any typos. There shouldn't be any kind of cut off visuals or stuff like that. So just make sure that you do your due diligence when you publish your portfolio, when you send it out, and make sure that it feels clean and high quality. We are designers, and by nature, I think we are definitely at least partially measured by the visuals we put out. And even if kind of UI design might not be your focus, even a research portfolio should kind of feel clean and high quality. So that's definitely one, the first impression, what kind of vibe does it give off? And then I am personally always looking to learn something about the person first. So I'm not trying to jump absolutely straight into the work. I try to get a grip of who that person is. Usually I've seen the resume first, which will help me. However, resumes are very focused on, achievements and actually pretty granular stuff already, whilst a portfolio with a nice intro can actually kind of give me a high-level view of who that person is and what makes them unique. And I'm really looking for that. I'm really trying to assess who that person is. And this is best done with an intro, which we'll definitely talk about further down in this evening. And then I look into the work. That's the next thing I see. So when I scroll down, I want to see your work, and I don't just want to see a basic preview. I want to understand what the projects are about, what you've done there, why should I keep on reading, basically. So those are definitely things I look at. In the case studies themselves, the main thing I'm looking for is the story. I don't want to see low fidelity designs, mid fidelity designs, high fidelity designs, prototype, summary. That's I can read academic papers if I want to feel like that. That's not what we're doing here. You should tell a story. You ran a project that had ups and downs, that had one thing leading to another that you maybe didn't expect. All of those things matter, and that's also. And why does that matter? Because in when we work in an actual environment, when the projects are real, when you're working in a company, unforeseen things happen. Collaboration happens with other people, and that can lead to friction. Also, sometimes can lead to very cool other things, and so, but it's very unpredictable. And I want to see how you manage that. I want to see how you collaborate in general. And even if you're the only person on the team, the designer, then you still interact with engineers, product managers, CEO, whatever the constellation is. And I wanna learn about that, and I want to see how you navigate that, and and all of those things. So there's more. If we go deeper, levels deeper, there's definitely more that I'm kind of looking for. For example, impact and results, or your understanding of how to measure that. That's definitely something that I'm also looking for overall. But I think those will probably kind of cover it top level. And if I if any of those are missing or significantly bad, that's first sign for me to leave. Because if I'm actually a hiring manager, I won't say hundreds, although that can happen, for some roles, hundreds, but definitely dozens of portfolios, and there's just no time to go through them all in a lot of depth. So you always have to prioritize, and unless you really can't find a single one in the dozens that kind of like, fit your first run through. I'm just gonna skip the ones that are just not cutting it in those regards, because those are kind of basic criteria for me. Yeah.
Should we talk about worst case scenarios? What for you is a red flag on a junior portfolio, or where do you see it and you're like, no, this is not happening?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of them are already mentioned, and I'm just going to repeat them. So first of all, if there's like a lot of typos, very obvious, like it can always happen that you like miss a full stop, or that you, I don't know, like there's like one letter missing in a word in text. It's okay. But like if I start spotting that you didn't even put this into ChatGPT for proofreading, which you can do in a matter of seconds these days, like that is not reflecting very well on your like your diligence, your kind of like level to attention, or your attention to detail, sorry. And the same goes for visuals. I know this is harder to check for, but like if I see a mock-up that's like skewed or has a weird ratio, or is otherwise kind of like cut off in a weird way, or something where it's clear that's not intended. Like 5 years back, it was actually still a little bit hard to do mock-ups like properly, and sometimes you had to spend money on these kits. But these days there are so many tools out there that make it so easy to do very beautiful mock-ups really quickly and like work with them. So there's no excuses for these. That's definitely a red flag. At least if the role involves any kind of UI work. Like if it's a pure UX job, which doesn't exist that much anymore, or like a pure research job, I might be able to still give you benefit of the doubt there. But for any kind of product design role or UX UI role, that is definitely going to be a close the tap one. The other one would be if all of your case studies do this thing where it's like introduction, research, wireframes, prototype, summary, done. Because that's the absolute cookie cutter thing to do. Even if you don't have a real project on your hands, and it's a fictional, it's like a bootcamp project or a self-initiated project or whatever, there's a lot more to tell. Like you hopefully did actual user research, actual user testing, and those things always uncover something that is worth talking about. Like there will be insights that will have steered your direction. I want to learn about that stuff. So if I see this cookie cutter structure, that's already a bad sign. And if I then go into the text, if there is any text at all, that's also a red flag. If there's only visuals, that's also not what we're looking for here. Then I'm likely going to close as well. I'm just trying to think of a third one that's like a super obvious red flag. I just want to make sure like people don't think like I'm like the absolute most critical designer out there. I absolutely am not. I think I give more like I am actually pretty lenient when it comes to this stuff, and I'm like very willing to give you like a second and third chance compared to others where I know like if they don't like the very first look, they're just gonna immediately close. I rarely ever do that. But I'm trying to think what could be an absolute red flag. I mean, like if the visual design, and again, if that's for a role where that plays any sort of like where that has any significance, if the visuals are clearly extremely off. So for example, if your typography is like all over the place and you have like weird spacings and weird kind of headings where like the sizes are completely off, and it's clear that you have no grasp of typography yet, like then that's also something where I have to say this is something that's kind of expected of any designer that has any kind of visual tasks to do. So you need to go back and practice that and like get those kind of foundations in. If I spot that like consistently, I'm definitely going to leave as well. I think that would also be something. Yeah. But other than that, like I'm very open. And if you want to like completely approach the portfolio from like a completely different perspective than anyone else has ever done before. I'm going to give that a chance, and I'm going to see about that, how that works. Yeah.
I'll just use this opportunity to also plug CareerFoundry at the same time, because with our design programs, the key takeaway is the portfolio, and you'll be working, as Florian did when he studied with CareerFoundry, with a mentor and tutor. So that's CareerFoundry's dual mentorship model. And the key takeaway is developing this portfolio, which you then have the confidence to present in a job interview setting. I'm just going to jump into some of the questions, because there are some good questions coming through. I will get around to some at the end. I think one question that's just come through in the main chat from Anna, I think, is a good one. And it's about designers with little to no real experience. Now, I think that's related to portfolios. Now, in your experience, Florian, what would you say to a designer that doesn't really have a big bank of projects? How can you put together a convincing portfolio if you're at a very early stage?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that you can always do. So first of all, you have to do projects, right? Like you have to start somewhere, and you will not be able to kind of apply anywhere with an empty portfolio or just like one very, very small case study in it. That just means you have to go back and like do projects. You can self-initiate projects. That's the first thing you can do. You can think of a topic. You can also seek help for that. That, for example, could come from a mentor. I'm going to reference having a mentor in a second again. They can help you. You can even use ChatGPT to kind of like get an idea of like what could be a good project to work on. And then you go and you do the project. You do the research. You do the concepts. You sort your findings. You go do the wireframes. You go test them. You build a prototype, test that, and you finish the project. And even though that's a fictional project, you can still do a lot with that and show a lot with that. And this is even, I think, more sometimes what's said between the lines there than anything else, because the actual output, obviously, it would be great if you could just say, hey, I worked for this company or did like an internship and I designed this thing that like made their business 10 times better. Yeah, that's cool. That's great. But like everyone knows that juniors usually don't have these opportunities. Some do, and it's great for these people because that usually helps them massively. But most people don't, and every hiring manager knows that. So if they're hiring for a junior role or are generally open to hiring a junior, they do know that. But what they still need to see is they still need to see that you can actually do the thinking that is needed and like kind of do the tasks that are needed in that role that they're hiring for. So one thing I mentioned earlier, for example, are impact and results. And very often I'm asked, how the hell am I supposed to show that as a junior with only fictional projects? Like, how could my project have an impact when it's not real? Well, it can't, right? Well, yeah, but you can have indicators of that. And the actual thing that matters here is that you show that you are thinking about how your work might have an impact, not the actual impact part itself, at least not for now. As a senior, that hypothetical will not get you far. You actually have to show results here. But we're still in junior world, and in junior world, it's perfectly fine to just say, this is how I would measure the impact. That's one way, like from a business perspective. And then also when you do user testing, for example, you can set a baseline. You can, for example, if you're working, and I'm just making that up on the spot, if you're working on a redesign of an existing app, you can use a test with that existing app first. You can let people run through something and then ask them specific questions that are like standardized with scales and see what their rating is across the board. You do this for 5 to 10 tests, I don't know. Depends on what you're doing. And then you redesign the thing as the subject of your project. And then you run the test again with your redesign and you compare your results to the baseline. And if there's an increase or decrease, depending on what you're opting for, you can take that as an indicator. But it's not actually about the numbers that come out of this. They don't matter that much. What matters more is that you actually show that you're thinking this way and that you're like business minded and you realize like what kind of context you will be working in. That's how you can do this as a junior. And I know this can sound overwhelming, especially if you have a completely empty portfolio and you are about like you're asked to do like 2, 3, 4 projects or something, which is roughly what I would aim for. But you have to put in the work. Like there's no way around. There's no shortcut for that. A program like CareerFoundry can help massively because that's what you're doing in those programs. Also, a mentor can help massively because they can guide you like on how to do that, what to measure for, what projects to do to like position yourself strategically. All of those things mentors can help you with, for sure. But yeah, that's it.
Sorry, my mic turned off.
No worries.
For the people in the audience, I'm actually just going to post a link to Florian's career change story for you to all read later. So I'm just going to post that there because it might be interesting for you. I think one thing which I'm just looking at the questions which are in the chat, but I think one thing I think when we're talking about job career change is we talk a lot about hard skills and we talk a lot about also softer, maybe transferable skills. I'm just looking at Sue. Sorry if I pronounced anyone's name wrong. Suna's question. When we're presenting transferable skills, because I say to a lot of CareerFoundry students, a lot of people join our programs and think that they're starting at absolute zero with no prior experience. This is not actually the case because a lot of people have previous professional experience in different careers or academic experience when they join the programs. And a lot of these transferable skills move into the tech world. So the question that I'm asking, Florian, is that how would you present maybe transferable skills in a portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, well, designers always like to say it depends, which it does most of the time. But yeah, so it depends on like obviously what your background is. There are definitely some things that are harder to transfer skills from, like in a way that recruiters and hiring managers understand how they're relevant. For example, if you were, I don't know, a cook, a line cook, for example, like I can immediately think of stuff that is actually transferable there. So there is stuff, but it's a lot harder to point that out, especially in a portfolio. But I like, especially nowadays, I see a lot of people coming from fields that are actually, you know, adjacent, like marketing, architecture, or, you know, academic fields revolving around, I don't know, data, for example. And such things have so many directly transferable skills. And in portfolios, you can show these. So on your resume, you can let the numbers talk and like let the like kind of like the skill descriptions talk. But in the portfolio, you can actually use your projects to kind of showcase these things. Some of them are harder to convey. So, for example, if you've worked in marketing, I'm pretty sure you've worked kind of like cross-functionally a lot, which is something that is always asked of a designer, right? You will have read that cross-functional collaboration. You will have read that a lot. And now everyone always assumes, okay, that means I, as a designer, work with engineers and product managers. Well, yeah, obviously, ideally, they'd love that. But if you've worked as a marketer with graphic designers, writers, and I don't know what else could be on a marketing team, like video editors, for example, that is the same scenario, just with different roles. And although there might be some difference in, like, you know, the technical skills of these people involved, there's still a lot that is transferable in just generally how you collaborate and how you approach using and working with different functions. So if you can show that in a project, for example, so let's say you self-initiate a project and you do a group project with someone who's trying to train for a PM role or someone who's training for an engineering role, then you can already show that very, very easily. And if you already have good skills there from your past career, you can apply those skills in that project, describe that in your case study, and people will immediately recognize that you are not starting out new here. You actually bring experience. And that is the magic moment you want to like conjure up in when people read your case studies. And that definitely works for a lot of those transferable skills, those soft skills. What is obviously always hard are these things like empathy and stuff like that. Like that, for example, you can actually just show by doing the user research in a proper way and describing that a little bit. Those are a bit harder. But yeah, at the end of the day, it depends a bit on the projects you run and on your actual background. And again, I think that mentors can help here a lot, especially if they have a similar background to you, but not necessarily. Like, for example, I have a background in, I originally come from literature, which is something I have a master's degree in. And then I switched into tech through like first a publishing house job and then a PM job, a product management job. And obviously all of those involve pretty different skill sets actually. And I always kind of like brought something with me when I moved on to the next thing. But over time, I also learned like how certain types of backgrounds can be leveraged. So for example, I've worked with a lot of people who come from architecture. Like that's one where I think I have a lot of knowledge right now how to actually leverage those existing skills. But there have been others. So yeah, it depends. You gotta talk to someone. I'd say this is also very important. Yeah.
Awesome. Maybe just going to jump into a couple of questions here. One which came through earlier from Ankit. This is quite specific. So what specific skills, resources, or strategies would you recommend for a 32-year-old accountant to transition into UI UX design in 2025?
Right. Okay. So your age doesn't matter that much. I know there's talk about ageism in the industry. Although I have to say that like, well, I don't want to. How do I say that? Like that it does exist in places. I think there's just no way of getting rid of that in some places. Some companies just have, I don't know, culture supporting that, and I don't like that at all. But overall, your age is not a problem. I transitioned in my late 20s, so that's not a problem. In terms of your background, accounting, the immediate thought is data, like understanding, leveraging data to make decisions, like data-driven decision making. This is something that a design is very much asked to do all the time, making decisions based on data, because contrary to popular belief, we do not, or we should not make decisions based on taste or, I mean, sometimes there's room for that, but like the big decisions are usually made and informed by data. So as an accountant, you've handled a lot of data and you probably also made decisions based on that. And so data-driven decision-making is something I would always highlight, at least in your resume, but could also very well be used in a portfolio, in a case study, because you can show how you measure data and then use it to make a design decision very, very easily in a case study. So that's definitely a strength I can see here. I think accountants also work cross-functionally quite a lot. I think you have to get involved with, like, depending on where you worked as an accountant and how, but I do know accountants who work like across different departments, like getting, stuff in from different departments with different requirements and kind of special cases. So you're working cross-functionally there because you will have to talk to those stakeholders, right? And that is definitely something that I think is very much relevant. Aside from that, I'd have to kind of go deeper on your individual kind of work history. That's why I think it's so important to talk to someone and kind of like that can help you, like a mentor, and go deeper on your background to really like identify those unique skills that you have and that you can gain a competitive advantage with. Yeah.
I think one thing which kind of comes up again and again and again in webinars and stuff, and also this evening, is that when it comes to portfolios, do ask other designers to just take a look, or ask friends and family to take a look, just to make sure that there's no typos or anything. If it comes to building your portfolio, don't feel that you're on an island alone. I think the design community, I think more than any other community, is incredibly supportive. I've seen some CareerFoundry students and graduates, post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, and the community jumps in and usually has some really good pointers. So I think reach out for contact people. Don't be an island.
Yeah, especially just to add on that really quickly, especially try to reach out to people with the same background that have made it. Because there are, especially if you're something like an accountant, like I'm 100% sure you will find people who were accountants and transitioned into design or tech in general, and they will have answers for you on how they did that. They might differ, which is fine. Everyone has their own approach. Everyone has to find out what works for them. But if you just hear them out, talk to them, you will hear a lot of things that you could try yourself and see. Yeah. Because that definitely also, well, I didn't particularly do this, but like I've set up mentees, or like my mentees sometimes with people who had different backgrounds, and that was always very fruitful. So yeah, please do that.
One question that's coming in, it's a bit of a shorter question, but from Charlotte is, what do you think is better, a website or a PDF or a link to FigJam? How are we going to present this portfolio?
Yeah, so ideally, and I had that on one of the slides, no worries. Like ideally get a website. At this point, it's so easy to do, and it's also free to do, actually. That's also kind of a myth that needs to be busted. Like you don't have to pay for Framer or Webflow. You can use the free plans. They are generous enough. The only thing you don't get is your own domain. But that's fine. No one will reject you over that. Get a website. Also, it is worth investing into these tools, because if you ever do any freelance work on the side and you can actually design a website in Framer and know what to do there, you're going to be able to charge more. You're going to just find more work, and it's a skill that I think is not wasted. Generally, I don't care really like where your website, like where you have your portfolio, if it's Framer, Webflow, Wix, Squarespace. If you code it yourself, by the way, also very nice, viable way to do that. Or if you, I don't know, use any kind of other builder like ReadyMac, UXfolio, like they are all fine. The only thing I'd ask you not to do is Behance. I recently had a post gone, well, semi-viral, I'd say, on LinkedIn around not using Behance, because Behance is absolutely not built for showing off this type of work in a proper way. And I know for a fact, and some even commented under my post, some hiring managers said, if I see a Behance link, I'm not even clicking on that anymore. Like, and that sounds harsh, but people say that. And they say that to me in closed rooms a lot, by the way. Like, that's just the people who were willing to say that publicly. So move off Behance if you can. And again, I don't think there's like a lot of excuses to not do that. There are things like PDFs can work really well as well. I have to add that. Like, I know a lot of people who have never done anything else than PDF portfolios. However, I do think that this is kind of like a skill of its own. Like, if you can build a Framer website, that's a skill. But if you can like do a really good PDF portfolio, that's a different skill. And if you're on the start of your career and you say, I just like PDF better and I feel like I can present my work way better there, go do it. Do that. Like, most hiring managers will not care about that. If it's really good, if it's actually really good, really well done, then do it. The thing that you are lacking in PDF, obviously, is any kind of like engaging way of presentation with videos, animations, moving things. And I'm not saying you should stuff your website full of that. Absolutely not. But there are a lot of ways with subtle things you can do on a website with motion and like, showing off a flow of an app you designed with a little video that you can never do in a PDF, at least not without like linking externally or something, which is always a little bit jarring. So PDF, fine, if you can master that. And if that's something you're like very passionate about, do it. Otherwise, I would always default to some kind of website with whatever builder you choose. The builder, by the way, or like the way you build your website could also be coded, right? Depends highly on your background, your technical existing knowledge. and a couple other factors. I was actually thinking I should make like a little quiz or something that you can take to find out which builder is the right one for you, because I'm getting asked this a lot and I have to ask the same questions always to kind of give you your answer. And I feel like I could automate that at this point. So I'm probably going to do that soon. Yeah. And Fig jams or like Figma slides or something for portfolio, similar to PDF, I would say. Be mindful of the loading time. I see some people doing Figma prototypes as portfolios. While these have a lot of the advantages of a website, they do have enormous loading times sometimes. And please recognize or acknowledge that some recruiters and hiring managers may be working with slightly shitty Wi-Fi sometimes. And if they can't open your portfolio, can't see your work, not so good. So let's say can be a solution, but be very mindful and work within the constraints there. Yeah, I could go on about this topic a little bit more, but I feel like I gave a good overview there.
Yeah. I think Shweta is asking a question about the structure of the portfolio.
Yeah.
How would you go about the structure?
Well, so the absolute basic structure should be that simple. Absolutely that simple. You have an intro, your hero section, like where you kind of introduce yourself, say your name, say your background, ideally, if you have like, career change or background, or if you already have some experience, your years of experience, and some unique things about yourself. And I can actually show you something about that just really quickly. Can we switch to the slides real quick? So this is like a little excursion, okay? Like, let's dive into that one a little bit deeper. I said that about the intro earlier. Like, an intro can do a lot for you, and ideally it does that in like one or two very, very, very good sentences. I have two great examples here. So the first one is Chen Chen on the left here. I've seen a portfolio for the first time over a year ago, and I still pull this up all the time because it's just so well done. So let's just analyze that really quickly, okay? So Chen Chen Lu is a systems thinking product designer with a knack for UX research and product thinking, especially in new and engaging tech. And then she has a second sentence here on the side. She likes the ringing bells, which is something personal about herself. Like, that's nice, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that first sentence. So her name, okay, easy. Systems thinking. That's the fourth word, and she is dropping a massive differentiator already. Systems thinking is something that is incredibly valuable as a designer, and she recognized that she is she thinks this way, and she can apply it, and she names that as a skill here. And that's a real differentiator, because systems thinking is definitely not something everyone has. And if you say you have that about yourself, that's so worth name dropping. Absolutely. She goes on with her title, which should always be in there. And one tip here, do not say you are a UX, UI, brand, graphic, video, motion, and 3D designer in the same sentence, because this will kind of they cancel each other out. No one will believe that you can do all of these things really well. Instead, focus on what describes you best. And just because you say you're a product designer does not mean that you can't do research. She does that, actually. She says she has a knack for UX research. So she brings everything a product designer does, and she especially likes UX research. That is such a nice way of, again, putting a little differentiator in, a second one, to this product design general kind of term. Because UX research is definitely not what traditionally a product designer has like a super big strength in. Like, they have to be able to do it. They have to actually do the thing, and they have to understand it, but usually on like a base level. So saying that she has a knack for it kind of differentiates her a little bit more. Now, she follows up with product thinking. Another super valuable thing, usually more found in product managers, but also very, very, very valuable in designers. And so she, again, recognized that about herself, put it here, and created, with these 3 differentiators, a really succinct and well-defined profile. By the way, just because I can't see chat right now, but like if anyone is saying, well, like, is she a senior or something? No, she was a fresh university graduate when I saw this. She has long found a job, but she just realized these things about herself. She reflected, and she found out that is what she is as a designer, and put it here in a really good way. And now to close this, she says, especially in new and engaging tech, giving up a little bit of what she is into and what kind of industry and type of job she'd like to move into without actually being too narrow. So she's not saying, I only want to work for credit card companies, which is way too narrow. And she's also not saying, I like tech, or I just want to work in tech. She is kind of honing in on like new and engaging tech. And if you could see the rest of her portfolio, you would see that 2 of her case studies are on machine learning and augmented reality. That is new and engaging tech. So she not only says that, she actually cements it with the projects in her portfolio. And that is masterclass, in my opinion. And if I see something like this, like, I'm immediately happy and immediately hooked as a hiring manager, because she knows this stuff about herself. She described it really well. And and then I'm happy to go on, dive into the work, which is, we can maybe switch back. The next thing I would look at, I think we can close the slides for now. The work is the next thing I want to see. I don't care how you present it. There are 1,000 ways to do that. I'd ideally love to see a preview of the work visually, like something that tells me about the work visually. Ideally, that is an actual mock-up of like one key screen or key thing about the work, but doesn't necessarily have to be. It could also be a UI element that's like really crucial to this piece of work. So for example, I did, like last year at my company, I did redesign our AI assistant, and it lives in this kind of like, in this box basically, and that box is would be the centerpiece of my case study preview, I guess, if I did one on that. So it could be that as well. And then I want a little description of like what the work's about, but I don't want to say redesign of AI assistant, because that is super boring. Like, that's so generic. I want to hear, like, in this case, we raise the adoption of AI functionality with that redesign. So I would say, increasing adoption by X% or through redesign of the AI system. Or, well, I would phrase that more nicely if I had some actual thought, time spent thought on that. But something like that. So because that makes me want to read more. Like, how did you do that? And like, oh wow, impressive result. Like, I want to learn more about this. And that's it. Like, that's the base, what I need in your portfolio. I don't need more. A lot of hiring managers want to read more about you as a person. I personally do not care about that until I've seen your work and say, okay, yeah, this person like seems like something. Some people do. So an About Me page, or a little section underneath the work that talks a little bit more about who you are, what maybe like your hobbies are, or maybe some things that you are doing that are like adjacent to design, for example, illustrations or graphic design work. If there's something really good you want to show off there, there's a good opportunity to do that. But I would not consider that a requirement, like absolutely. Like, if you have the good intro and the work well presented on the homepage, you're done. Like, that's it. That's all you need. And in terms of the case studies, well, it's a different topic where I could talk even longer about that. But like I said earlier, tell a story. Don't do the cookie cutter thing where you just dump like, 12 low fidelity wireframes, 12 mid fidelity wireframes, and 12 high fidelity wireframes, and say nothing about what that all means. Like, make sure that you tell an actual story of like how you got to the point, like, and make sure that visuals and text like kind of, like have a synergy and actually reference each other or like help each other. And never like one rule I like to go by in a case study is never place a visual if it's not relevant like to the text or to like what you're telling at the moment. Like never paste in anything that doesn't actually contribute to the story you're telling right now. Yeah, well, don't want to like, I want to mindful of time, obviously leave room for more questions or things.
Let's just fast forward and say that the portfolio's worked and you've got past the initial screening and you end up in front of a small panel or maybe a couple of people. Let's not call it a panel. That sounds too formal. But say you've been invited to an interview, you've got a coffee, you're sat there. Is that a good time? Are you just going to chat in that interview, or are you also going to bring out the portfolio again and start talking people through it? What are you going to do in the interview?
Yeah, good question. I don't think we would touch on that, but yeah, I do like that topic because it is like usually when people pass that first stage of like actually getting interviews, like that's the next big burning question, how to deal with that. So my recommendation is to like once that happens, like once you start getting interviews, look at your case studies, like the two best ones, I'd say, and do slides for them. Like prepare slides on your portfolio. And now before you think you have to just redo your whole portfolio in slides. No, that's not what I mean. Then you could just show your portfolio. And then, by the way, a lot of people do that. And I've done that myself in the past. Personally, with limited success. For other people, it worked better. But a lot of people cannot properly talk through their portfolio. They just end up defaulting to reading their case study out aloud, which is not something you want to do, right? Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you want that? Why would anyone want that? They could have read that before. They probably read it before. So what you instead want to do is you want to prepare slides. And I always say, aim to not have more than 10 slides per project. If it's a huge project or if there's like a lot of things you really need to touch on, it can be more. But like I try to just aim for that so I limit myself and like not get carried away. And in those 10 slides, you don't have to have a lot of text. Actually, I would always say no more than 3 bullet points per slide and one key visual or one key deliverable, or whatever it is that you need to talk about at that stage. And then you tell that story in a very organic way throughout those slides. And if you provide that, like those insights, you can talk around so much and you can react to the audience because everything is so flexible still. And that is usually how I deal with that. And that's also like I did that in my last job search, like preparing slides, and it massively helped. Like it massively helped me talk through my designs and explain decisions and such things. And that is definitely what I would do. But do not spend time on those slides before you are actually getting invited to interviews, because they will never get you the interviews. They will just help you to move on to the next stage eventually. Yeah.
Awesome. Just going to jump into the questions again. Gomathy's got a great question. I have 6 years of work experience in automotive and e-commerce industry as seller and customer support. So while transitioning into UI and UX, should I mention my prior experience in my resume while applying for UX jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, automotive as seller and customer support, yeah, I suppose you sold cars and I don't know, other things in e-commerce, and you did customer support. So both are valuable in their own way, both are obviously different kind of skill sets, I suppose. Selling always goes hand in hand with communication, I suppose. So communication skills are vital for designers, both for collaboration, but also for communicating your work, your decisions in the right way at the right time. So when you talk about these skills, I would always highlight communication for the seller part. For the customer support, communication is definitely also vital, but I think there it's even more like kind of leading with like a customer first mindset, which easily translate into a user first mindset, because in some regards they are interchangeable. Some people would even argue it's the same thing. I would beg to differ there, but still it's very much applicable. So definitely talk about it. What I would do, so for career changers who have like longer careers, where I'd say, 5+ years or something in other industries, where some stuff definitely isn't relevant, I would always say, if it bloats up your resume too much, summarize the jobs you had in one entry in your resume and just give the highlight parts that are actually relevant to design, like communication, like I said, cross-functional collaboration, communication skills, and such things. Ideally, tie them to achievements you reach by using those skills. But definitely make sure to mention that. Just don't make sure. Recently, I had a mentee who or someone booked a resume review with me, and they had like a 2-page resume, and 1 page was just non-design experience. And while there was a lot of good stuff in there, there was also a lot of stuff that didn't really need to be in there. And so I had her cut that down and summarize and basically combine her existing non-design experience into like one bigger entry that would just give you the highlights, because that's what people care about, right? Like if there's stuff you already know is not relevant, but for sure is not relevant, why show that? Why show that on the resume? They are not checking those boxes. They are not looking, to see what else you did. They just want to hear what you did was relevant. So yeah, while not leaving it out, make sure that it has proper format and relevance, for sure. And I know that it can be hard to identify what is relevant. Again, a mentor can help massively here, or just someone from a similar background that has made the change already. Yeah, exactly.
I think here I would also just post a link. We are currently offering a partial scholarship off of our design programs, but I'm just going to post a link because if anyone's got any specific questions about their previous work experience or maybe jobs in their locality or changing careers, I would recommend speaking to one of our program advisors just to kind of get a flavor of, what skills you already have, transferable skills, and whether they're applicable to the the tech area that you want to apply for. This whole webinar is focused on design, but there are other routes that you can do, and some routes might actually be more might actually fit a little bit better to your background, academic, professional. So I would recommend booking a call with a program advisor for specific questions like that. One thing which I wanted to get back round to, Florian, is actually tailoring portfolios, because you're going to be applying to a lot of different companies and with a lot of different focuses in a lot of different industries. And sometimes you're going to have to change the narrative a little bit. How do you go about kind of like rebooting your portfolio when you're applying for different jobs?
Yeah, interesting. So I usually tell people, do not have like a separate portfolio, or do not adapt your portfolio for each job in the same field, even if it's like other industries. Because if you really want to like double down on that, you'd even have to select different case studies sometimes. If let's say you have like a knack for healthcare, you maybe have a healthcare background even, and you want to now design in a company that does like healthcare products, but all of a sudden you also find fintech interesting. Now like people come ask me, should I do a new portfolio, or should I completely redo my portfolio to kind of speak to fintech? And just the amount of work needed is usually, I can say that it's not worth it, because by the time that you're done with that job's gone. So instead, what I would do is I would, if your portfolio is really so hard, like so massively geared towards like healthcare, I would just try to find more general words to say the same things. So, like what Chen did there by saying new and engaging tech, that's a little bit ambiguous, right? Like like I said, like she has a case study in machine learning and also in augmented reality. But let's say she'd apply for a role like in conversation design. That still fits the bill. Like those terms are big enough to cover more of that. So now for the person that used to really be into healthcare and now suddenly is into fintech, that person can, both of them are very often B2B. Like that's one thing. And also they are very often SaaS tools. Not always. You have to make sure you figure that out. For example, healthcare both could also be B2C, but that you have to make sure that you really customize that based on what you're trying to achieve. But there can be a lot of overlap. For example, one big overlap in healthcare products and fintech products are data visualizations, like dashboards for things, or like monitoring certain values and certain data points. You will find that in both worlds quite often. So now if you've geared your portfolio towards like healthcare, instead of just saying, oh, I'm like really good at showing kind of healthcare data, you just say, I'm very good at visualizing data in general, because that's literally what you are. You did that. And it doesn't really matter if you visualize, insulin blood levels, or if you visualize, what a stock's doing. Like that is kind of the stock chart. It's not the same thing, but like as a designer, you do very similar things to achieve that. So I'd rather take a step back, identify those things, make your portfolio slightly more general, while still niching down on stuff. Like data visualization is a niche, but it's a very broad niche. And is also a skill, right? Like something to kind of point out about yourself that you can do that well is going to differentiate you from other candidates. So yeah, now just to close that, there is, however, I think a scenario where an actual second portfolio, like a copy of your portfolio might be worth doing, and that is if you are going for roles in a slightly different field. So let's say you've been applying for product design roles a lot, but you are like a super visual designer, and you can also imagine working in like a visual or graphic design job. Okay. Now, those UX case studies will not do a lot for you there. I've had mentees like that, where like they were really good visually. They were very open to working in product design, but they were also not really ready to kind of fully give up on like visual and graphic design. So they copied their portfolio, took out all of the case studies that were really not really usable for that. Instead added other work, like more visually focused work that wouldn't sit well with the product design crowd, because they were too like purely focused on visual stuff, and basically created a second portfolio. However, with very little effort, because they took the same portfolio, just copied it, made a second link, and swapped out the work, customized the case studies a little bit to focus on other stuff. But the overall amount of work put into that was, half a week or something, which I'd say for portfolio stuff is fairly limited. And so that is a valid reason. However, please also do not go off and like do 4 portfolios for like, UX research, UX design, UI design, whatever. Like a lot of that can still be combined. Some things are better separated, but be very deliberate and careful around that.
Awesome. Florian, thank you so much for going to such depth on portfolios. I'm mindful of the time. We're closing this session. A couple of things I wanted to say. Firstly, we've recorded this webinar, and I'll be sending around a recording tomorrow with some additional links, information. If you've got some questions, I didn't get around to answering all the questions in the Q&A today. If you've got any questions, as Florian said, you can feel free to reach out to Florian. And also just send the link to Open Doors. So this is Florian's platform where he's posted lots and lots and lots of design jobs